Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves for a chilling journey into the macabre world of skull cups, a practice so shocking, so utterly horrifying, that it'll make your blood run cold and your spine tingle with fear. Picture this. You're at a grand feast, surrounded by opulent decorations and the finest delicacies. The host approaches, offering you a drink from an ornate vessel. But as you reach out to take it, your fingers brush against something smooth, curved, familiar. You look down, and to your horror, you realize you're holding a human skull, hollowed out and polished to a gleaming sheen. This, my dear listeners, is no fantasy. This is the terrifying reality of skull cups. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely this can't be real. But oh, it is. Throughout history, cultures across the globe have used human skulls as drinking vessels, turning the remnants of the dead into macabre goblets for the living. It's a practice that sends shivers down the spine and raises goosebumps on even the bravest souls. Let's dive headfirst into this grisly topic, shall we? The use of skull cups, also known as kapala in Sanskrit, dates back thousands of years. Imagine, if you will, ancient warriors, their faces streaked with blood and grime, celebrating their victory by drinking from the skulls of their fallen enemies. The very thought is enough to make your stomach churn, isn't it? But wait, there's more. In Tibet, skull cups have been used in religious ceremonies for centuries. Buddhist tantric practitioners believe that drinking from a human skull can help overcome the ego and face the reality of death. Talk about an extreme way to confront your mortality. These sacred vessels, often adorned with precious metals and jewels, are used to hold offerings of wine, blood, or other substances during rituals. It's a practice that blurs the line between the sacred and the profane, the holy and the horrifying. Now, let's take a moment to consider the process of creating these ghastly goblets. Picture a dark, dank chamber filled with the acrid smell of death. A figure hunches over a freshly cleaned skull, meticulously scraping away the last bits of flesh and tissue. The sound of metal on bone echoes through the room as they work, transforming what was once a person into a grotesque drinking vessel. It's enough to make your skin crawl, isn't it? But the horror doesn't stop there. Oh no. In some cultures, the use of skull cups was believed to transfer the power or wisdom of the deceased to the drinker. Can you imagine? Sipping from the cranium of a revered ancestor or a vanquished foe, believing that with each gulp, you're absorbing their strength, their knowledge, their very essence. It's a concept that's both fascinating and utterly terrifying. Now let's take a journey back in time, to the 5th century BC. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote about the Scythians, a nomadic people who roamed the Eurasian steppes. According to Herodotus, the Scythians had a particularly gruesome custom. They would take the skulls of their most hated enemies, clean them thoroughly, and then line the inside with gold. These gilded craniums would then be used as drinking cups at special feasts and ceremonies. Talk about holding a grudge, huh? But the Scythians weren't alone in this macabre practice. Fast forward to the 16th century, and we find ourselves in the court of Kumbha of Mewar, a Rajput ruler in India. Legend has it that Kumbha defeated the Sultan of Malwa and had his skull fashioned into a drinking cup. This grisly trophy, known as the Skull Cup of Rana Kumbha, is said to still exist today, a chilling reminder of the brutal wars of the past. Now let's cross the ocean to the Americas, where we find even more bone-chilling examples of skull cup use. The ancient Aztecs, known for their bloody rituals and human sacrifices, were also said to have used skull cups in their religious ceremonies. Imagine standing atop a great pyramid, the air thick with the metallic scent of blood, as a priest raises a skull cup to the sky, offering a libation to the gods. It's a scene straight out of a nightmare, isn't it? But perhaps the most infamous skull cup in history belongs to a figure you might have heard of, Genghis Khan. Yes, the great Mongol conqueror himself was said to have drunk from the skull of his defeated enemy, Inalchuk, the governor of Otrar. Picture the scene. The great Khan, seated in his lavish tent, surrounded by his most trusted generals. He raises the skull cup, filled with kumis, fermented mare's milk, and toasts to his victory. The polished bone gleams in the firelight as he brings it to his lips, a grim reminder of the fate that awaits those who dare to cross him. Now you might be wondering, surely this practice died out centuries ago. Well, hold on to your hats, folks, because I've got news for you. The use of skull cups persisted well into the modern era. During World War II, there were reports of Japanese soldiers using the skulls of Allied troops as sake cups. It's a chilling reminder that even in the 20th century, the darkest aspects of human nature could still rear their ugly heads. But let's not forget that the use of skull cups wasn't always about violence and conquest. In some cultures, it was seen as a way to honor the dead. In the Tibetan sky burial ritual, for example, the skull of the deceased might be used to make a kapala, ensuring that the person's remains continue to serve a spiritual purpose even after death. It's a practice that challenges our Western notions of death and reverence, doesn't it? Now let's delve into the symbolism of these macabre vessels. In many cultures, the skull is seen as a powerful symbol of mortality, wisdom, and the cycle of life and death. By drinking from a skull, one is literally internalizing these concepts, taking them into their very being. It's a visceral, tangible way of confronting our own mortality, of staring death in the face and saying, "I see you, and I am not afraid." But of course, the use of skull cups isn't without controversy. In recent years, there have been heated debates about the ethical implications of using human remains in this way. Some argue that it's a violation of human dignity, a desecration of the dead. Others see it as a meaningful cultural practice with deep spiritual significance. It's a complex issue, isn't it? One that forces us to confront our own beliefs about death, respect, and the boundaries between the sacred and the profane. Let's take a moment to consider the psychological impact of drinking from a skull cup. Imagine holding the polished cranium in your hands, feeling the weight of it, the smoothness of the bone. As you raise it to your lips, you can't help but think about the person this skull once belonged to. Who were they? What were their hopes, their dreams? And now, here you are, using their remains as a drinking vessel. It's a profound, unsettling experience that forces you to confront your own mortality in a way few other things can. Now, let's talk about the craftsmanship involved in creating these grisly goblets. It's not just a matter of cleaning out a skull and calling it a day. Oh no. The process of creating a skull cup is a complex, time-consuming affair that requires great skill and attention to detail. First, the skull must be thoroughly cleaned and sanitized. Then, it's often treated with preservatives to prevent decay. The top of the skull is carefully cut away to create the bowl of the cup, and the edges are smoothed and polished. In some cases, the skull cup might be adorned with precious metals, gems, or intricate carvings. Imagine a skull cup encrusted with rubies, the gems glittering like drops of blood in the candlelight. Or picture a skull intricately carved with scenes of battle or religious imagery, telling a story in bone. These aren't just drinking vessels, they're works of art, albeit of the most macabre kind. But let's not forget the darker side of this practice. The use of skull cups has often been associated with acts of extreme violence and cruelty. In some cases, the skulls used were those of conquered enemies or sacrificial victims. Can you imagine the terror of knowing that not only would you be killed, but that your very skull would be turned into a trophy for your killer? It's a level of brutality that's almost beyond comprehension. Now, let's explore some of the legends and myths surrounding skull cups. In Norse mythology, it was said that in Valhalla, the great hall of the slain, warriors would drink from the skulls of their enemies. Picture a grand feast hall, filled with the greatest heroes of Norse legend, all drinking from gleaming skull cups. It's a scene that's both awe-inspiring and terrifying, isn't it? In Hindu mythology, the goddess Kali is often depicted holding a skull cup, or kapala, filled with blood. This powerful image represents the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, with the skull cup symbolizing the temporary nature of physical existence. It's a reminder that even the most fearsome deities are intimately connected with death and mortality. But let's bring things back to the real world for a moment. In 2011, archaeologists in England made a shocking discovery at Gough's Cave in Somerset. They found 3 human skull cups that dated back to the Paleolithic era, some 14,700 years ago. These ancient vessels showed clear signs of meticulous preparation, with the skulls carefully cleaned and shaped. It's a chilling reminder that the practice of using human skulls as drinking vessels is almost as old as humanity itself. Now imagine for a moment that you're an archaeologist, carefully brushing away the dirt from a newly discovered skull cup. As you work, you can't help but wonder about the person who drank from this grisly vessel. Were they a warrior, celebrating a great victory? A priest, performing a sacred ritual? Or perhaps a ruler, demonstrating their power over life and death? The possibilities are endless, each more intriguing and unsettling than the last. But let's not forget that the use of skull cups isn't limited to human skulls. In some cultures, the skulls of animals have also been used as drinking vessels. The Vikings, for example, were known to drink from the horns of cattle, which were often elaborately decorated. While not quite as macabre as human skull cups, these animal skull vessels still carry a certain primal power, don't they? Now, let's consider the psychological impact of using skull cups. For the warriors and conquerors who drank from the skulls of their enemies, it was likely a way of asserting dominance and power. But for those who used skull cups in religious or spiritual contexts, the experience was probably quite different. Can you imagine the mix of awe, reverence, and perhaps a touch of fear that would come with drinking from a sacred skull cup during a religious ceremony? But the use of skull cups isn't just a thing of the distant past. Even today, there are some who continue this practice. In certain tantric Buddhist traditions, skull cups are still used in rituals and ceremonies. These modern kapala are often made from metal or other materials shaped to resemble human skulls, but the symbolism remains the same. It's a living link to an ancient, often misunderstood practice. Now, let's talk about the legal and ethical issues surrounding skull cups. In many countries, the use of human remains in this way is strictly prohibited. But in others, particularly where it's considered a sacred religious practice, the use of skull cups is protected under freedom of religion laws. It's a complex issue that raises questions about cultural relativism, religious freedom, and the rights of the dead. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of skull cups is the way they force us to confront our own mortality. When you drink from a skull cup, you're quite literally staring death in the face. It's a visceral reminder that one day, you too will be nothing but bones. It's a thought that's both terrifying and strangely liberating, isn't it? As we near the end of our journey into the world of skull cups, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned. From ancient warriors to modern-day religious practitioners, the use of human skulls as drinking vessels has persisted throughout history and across cultures. It's a practice that challenges our notions of life and death, of the sacred and the profane. Whether you find the idea of skull cups fascinating or horrifying, or perhaps a bit of both, there's no denying the power of this ancient practice. It's a reminder of the darker side of human nature, of our capacity for both cruelty and reverence. And perhaps in some strange way, it's also a celebration of life, a defiant toast in the face of our own inevitable mortality. So the next time you raise a glass, take a moment to consider the long, dark history of drinking vessels, and be grateful that your cup is made of glass or ceramic, not bone, because you never know. In another time, in another place, you might have found yourself drinking from a very different kind of cup indeed. Sweet dreams, listeners, and may your nightmares be free of grinning skull cups.